So Tamal mentioned to Prabhupada that they'd been doing an investigation about where Vishnu John, they had his passport, he couldn't have left India without it, he didn't apply for a new one. Some Brahmins came to the Delhi temple and said that a white sannyasi had come to Rishikesh, to Hardwar, Prayag, where Chodaharidas committed suicide. And this white sannyasi paid them to take him out in a boat and chant mantras so he wouldn't take a ghost body. He tied rocks to himself and jumped off the boat. So some white Swami did that. So when they put all the pieces together, they realized that must have been Vishnu John. He hasn't been seen since. So Tamal mentioned that to Prabhupada, that we really think he did commit suicide. And he asked Prabhupada, do you know where Vishnu John is, Prabhupada? And Prabhupada began to cry. The tears came. And he said, Vishnu John is very advanced. First he said he did not have to do that. But then when he asked him, first he said, when he heard the story, he did not have to do that. And then Tamal said, Prabhupada, do you know where Vishnu John is? And he said, he's very advanced. He's still chanting Hare Krishna. He's very advanced. And then about 2 weeks later, Prabhupada, when he woke up in the morning, he said that Vishnu John was chanting to him at nighttime, like Chodharidas came back and chanted for Lord Chaitanya.
When we arrived in London in 1968, our small party decided that the best way to become known, Prabhupada wanted us to make a splash. So the best way to become known would be reach the Beatles, because they were luminaries of the time. So we agreed that we would make prasadam dishes, apple dishes, to bring to Apple Records every day and see if we could catch someone's attention. So we did that, and the prasad went from the lower floors to the upper floors, so that ultimately everyone tasted some of that prasad, and they became a little addicted to that. So finally, when we stopped sending prasad, we were notified, where is this Apple Hare Krishna group? So we came to meet them, and ultimately, I think, met George that day. And the first person to strike off a serious friendship with George was Shamsunder. He and George Harrison just clicked. They were like brothers. Shamsunder used to rock back and forth. He was a tall, thin man. He used to rock back and forth. And I remember when he met George, he was rocking back and forth. And George Harrison started rocking back and forth like this. And practically their whole relationship was, I remember, like this, back and forth. Very close friends they became. But ultimately through that, George became aware of our chanting. Now Mukunda Maharaj, now then Mukunda Das, he was a musical genius, an arranger and a composer, and he was the leader of our group. We all played instruments, and he composed the melody for Govindam, and we used to go about London and do Sankirtan at various places, the Arts Lab and a macrobiotic restaurant. So we were pretty tight musically. And when George heard that we were into transcendental chanting and chanting Hare Krishna, he really wanted to hear us. And almost right away we started having really good kirtans with him at his house, and he said, I want to record this. And so the first thing we did was the Hare Krishna mantra on a 45, and I believe it was Sri Krishna on the backside. That became number 1 in Czechoslovakia, was top 10, top the pops in England. And then that led to the larger album, the Govindam album, which the lead cut was the Ramasamhita, the Govindam prayers. So Srila Prabhupada was, of course, very happy with the involvement that we were having with the Beatles. We ultimately lived at John Lennon's Tittenhurst estate for much of the fall of '69. And when Srila Prabhupada finally did arrive, he was so very pleased of this connection. I believe he called that Govindam cut a Krishna conscious symphony. This is a Krishna conscious symphony. Very transcendental. You like that?
There's a funny story that took place in New Zealand. And of course, Srila Prabhupada, his patients could also be taxed. New Zealand was a beautiful country, of course, for Srila Prabhupada to visit, and devotees there were very mellow, very sweet. And there were a lot of families that had small children. And after the lecture one day, Srila Prabhupada asked, "Are there any questions?" And so, one after another, these fathers and mothers would bring their children up and say, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, please give a name to my child." And so he gave one name and then another name, and it would go on, and finally, someone asked Srila Prabhupada, "Please give a name to my daughter." And he said, "Rose." And I think his patience had been tested at that point.
But one morning, I got everything set up, turned the fountain on, and then I noticed there was one little bush in his garden that had 4 little white flowers on it. So I thought, well, I'll pick these and put them on his Vyasa-san. And I put them on the pillow there. As soon as he sat down, he picked them up and started smelling them. And he held them the whole 2 hours there. Then the next morning, when he sat down, I was standing there and he put his hand out to me. And I thought, oh, he wants flowers. But that little bush isn't going to have any more flowers because I picked them all yesterday. So he didn't say anything, but I knew that I should go look for those flowers, look at the bush. And I went over there, and to my surprise, there was 8 flowers on that little plant. It was just 1 foot by a little teeny plant. And I went, wow, so I picked the 8 flowers, and I took them back, gave them to Prabhupada. And he smelled them, and then he said, simply by smelling this particular type of flower, which is like a little white Bakaki or Mogra, I'm not sure exactly what the name was, but it looks like a small gardenia, a little white flower. He said it smelled really good. Simply by smelling this particular type of flower, it regulates your life errors. So, Prabhupada saw a reason for everything. He didn't do it for sense gratification. He offered it to Krishna, Krishna's, energy. And then every day after that, this little bush would produce, a whole bunch of flowers. So I'd put them there every day, and Prabhupada would smell them every day. And so that was a pretty mystical. Another one of the things that proved to me that Krishna was directly protecting Prabhupada and providing for him.
With regard to Srila Prabhupada meeting his godbrothers, it was in, I think, March or April of 1976, when Srila Prabhupada asked me to travel across to Navadvip to pick up Srila Sridhar Maharaj, to bring him over to meet with Srila Prabhupada at the mandir in Mayapur. And it was a very glorious time. There were so many devotees there for the festival. And we had just purchased, actually, from the South Africa Yatra, 1 Mercedes for Srila Prabhupada. And we had driven it across overland. And at that time, Srila Prabhupada had asked me also to stay on as his secretary at the Mayapur festival. So we drove over to Navadvip. It was a long drive, and went to the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat. And I remember going upstairs, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj was sitting there. A very old gentleman, a little bit older than Srila Prabhupada. He was chanting japa, and I offered my respects and obeisances and invited him into the car, and we took him over to meet Srila Prabhupada. And we brought him upstairs to Srila Prabhupada's room, and he and Srila Prabhupada were very, very close. There was no doubt about it. They were very, very dear friends, and they offered their obeisances to each other, and it was clear that they had a very special relationship.